The 2021 season is over and it's flown by. At the end of it, we have a new world champion after a hard-fought campaign. But it wouldn't feel right if I didn't do one final video looking at the 5 things we learned from the 2021 season, and there is so much to talk about from this year's action. So let's have a look. My name's Andy and this is Behind the Drive. Max Verstappen is a worthy F1 world champion. Max Verstappen is our newest world champion, and what a season it's been for the 24-year-old. From the start of the year, we had a battle between Verstappen and Hamilton, as the changes to the aerodynamic regulations seemed to bring the Red Bull and the Mercedes cars much closer together, and as such we were in for a brilliant fight between two of the most talented drivers on the grid. And it was a battle between the generations, with Max Verstappen leading the way for the majority of the season, and despite being taken down to the wire, he prevailed on the final lap of the final race of the year. You have to appreciate Verstappen's performance this year. He is truly one of the greatest Formula 1 talents, and it was only a matter of time before he won a world championship. He's done so by potentially ending an era of dominance from a driver who's statistically the greatest of all time. This feels as influential as Fernando Alonso taking Michael Schumacher's crown in 2005, and Verstappen's consistency across the season is what made that possible. At 18 of the 22 races this season, he either came first or second. Now that's ridiculous form and consistency. To add to that, 10 of those 18 were race victories, which is just mighty. Over the year, Verstappen also led the most laps with 652 to Hamilton's 297, and he got 10 pole positions to Hamilton's 5. The championship was only really close at the end because of Verstappen's bad luck in Azerbaijan with the tyre blowout and the incidents at Silverstone and Hungary, which cost him valuable points on both of those weekends. It must be said that Verstappen was the better of the two drivers over the course of the 2021 season, and so he thoroughly deserved to take the World Championship crown for this season, and is definitely a worthy winner. Verstappen's a generational talent, and is the first driver born after 1987 to win the World Championship. Given he was born in 1997, that's a 10-year gap between him and the next youngest F1 World Champion in the world right now, which is Sebastian Vettel. It's Verstappen that's bridged that gap and has been talented enough to step up and take the opportunity that he's been given with that Red Bull car this year. It's really a generational shift for Formula 1. Some of Verstappen's finest races this year included the win in the USA, where he lost the lead at the start to win it back through a clever strategy and the support of his teammate. A race in which he was calling for the optimum move for the team to put maximum pressure on Hamilton. There was then the dominant displays at the 2 races in Austria, where Verstappen was simply in a class of his own. And then, of course, there was the French Grand Prix, where Verstappen once again won a race of strategy, with a tactical second stop to ensure he had the pace at the end to get the win. Given how close this championship ended up, all of those wins were critical in his maiden championship winning campaign, and I expect he will have learned an awful lot about how to compete for a world championship. We could well be looking at the beginning of a new dynasty in Formula 1, so of course, Verstappen gets a green box for the 2021 season. Before we get into the FIA controversies and the other points we learned from the season, I want to take a moment to talk to you about the sponsor of this video, Atlas VPN. Atlas VPN is designed to make the internet accessible and secure for everyone. And right now, they're running a huge Christmas discount, meaning you can be protected for just $1.39 a month, with 3 months extra for free, and with a 30-day money-back guarantee. A virtual private network makes all of your internet traffic travel through an encrypted tunnel. When you're using a public Wi-Fi source without a VPN, your data is vulnerable to hackers or even internet service providers. Atlas VPN will protect you from those dangers, whilst also hiding your IP address. So it leaves you safe in the knowledge that you're protected on whichever Wi-Fi source you're using. Another bonus of using Atlas VPN is the ability to change your server location. This means that you can gain access to all of the streaming services that have geo-restricted content. So you can select a server from a different country, reload your streaming service, and gain access to a whole load of new content to watch through the off-season. And the best thing, Atlas VPN works on Windows, Mac, iOS and Android, so you can use Atlas VPN on any of your devices. For a limited time, Atlas VPN is running a huge Christmas discount, which means you can get a 3-year subscription for just $1.39 a month, plus an extra 3 months for free. And they're so confident that you'll love it, They even throw in a 30-day money-back guarantee as well. Make sure you head to the link in the description to get this offer today and protect yourself online. The FIA have a lot of work to do in the off-season. Sadly, one of the many themes of this brilliant F1 season has been the number of dubious FIA decisions and the actions of the teams to try and influence matters. And in my opinion, the main reason for this is the convoluted nature of the rulebook. The sporting regulations for 2021 were over 90 pages long, which is just ridiculously difficult to comprehend. And when you consider decisions that influence F1 races need to be made within minutes, it's a minefield of clauses and contradicting terms. In addition, to make the job of the race director even harder, you have the teams lobbying for decisions throughout the race. I think that's also a fundamental issue with the current setup. Whilst the FIA's main priority in the races is and always will be safety, they have been relentlessly told what to do by the team personnel this year. This is just wrong. You can't have the teams pushing for different outcomes based on their desires or needs. It should be a matter of safety and fair racing. So when you see countless controversies throughout a season, it's nothing but disappointment. Track limits is one of the things that seems to be so easy to solve, but has been a recurring issue throughout the 2021 season, with the definition of the track being different at each and every circuit, and often different corners at the same circuit. The tracks that we didn't have any controversy on were those that have the sensors in the curbs that identify when a car has overstepped the mark. Personally, I think these should become mandatory for every Grade 1 circuit around the world. Set the sensors up to detect when a car goes beyond the white line with all four wheels, and it's the time that gets deleted. I'm sure it's not necessarily a simple fix, and I'm no circuit designer or rule maker, but it feels as though this is a solution which needs to be implemented sooner rather than later. You then have the rules themselves, a list of confusing and convoluted points regarding the ways in which the car should race. It's clear that the rules need to be simplified, and that there should be no team involvement in writing them. Why should the competitors of a sport have any say in the rules? They should learn and play by them, not the other way around. Another solution is that the teams must not be allowed to lobby the race director. It should be a one-way communication channel, with the race director being allowed to contact the pit walls, and the team should only be allowed to contact the race director for matters of safety. For example, when Red Bull contacted Massi in Azerbaijan, recommending that all teams have the opportunity to change tyres in a red flag period to avoid another high-speed tyre failure. In the 5 Things We Learned videos following both the Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi races, I said that decisions made were confusing and showed a lack of control from the race director, Michael Massi. To be honest, I still believe the decisions at these races were disappointing, particularly that last lap in Abu Dhabi where there was a decision made to allow racing to go ahead despite the standard practice not being followed. It feels like there's been a growing desire to highlight the show of Formula 1, and I believe that's a good thing. We want to promote the sport to new fans and audiences around the world. Formula 1 had this opportunity in Abu Dhabi. I've never seen a Formula 1 race be so widely talked about before the event, but we should not be seeing decisions being taken that ultimately make the result seem contrived and unfair. Perhaps there needs to be more of a standard practice to call a red flag if the safety car is due out with less than 10 laps to go. Perhaps it needs to be something different entirely. I'm not here to make the rules, but I do believe that the FIA has a lot of work to do in the off-season to ensure that we don't see a year like this one happen again. Fundamentally, it's a near impossible task, particularly when it comes to racing moves, as every situation is slightly different. But we need to see more consistency, and maybe that comes with a set team of stewards that are incredibly experienced and trained for the role as opposed to the current rotation model. I hope that this work happens before lights out in Bahrain in 2022, but for now, it's a red box for the FIA for this season. They are meant to be the rule makers and enforcers, but it feels like the inconsistency has brought their integrity into question for this season. The old guys have still got it. There is a new generation of drivers coming through into the sport, with Verstappen, Leclerc, Russell and Norris, among others, starting to emerge as the future leaders of Formula 1. But we're in a transition period at the moment, as alongside these young talents, we have some of the old guard remaining in the sport. Fernando Alonso returned in 2021, having had 2 years out of the sport, and there were mixed expectations for the Spaniard's return, but he has absolutely delivered this season. And in a car which was probably the 6th fastest overall in 2021, he brought it up the order to finish ahead of AlphaTauri in 5th. His performance in Hungary ensured the team took their first wing since their return to Formula 1, as he valiantly defended from Lewis Hamilton to prevent the Mercedes driver from getting to Esteban Ocon up at the front. That was one of the most impressive performances of his season, and he put a similarly brilliant performance in Qatar to protect the tyres, something that Alpine car was particularly strong at all season. On that day, Alonso ended up third in the race, returning to the podium for the first time since his Ferrari days in 2014, so there's no doubt that Alonso is still one of the best on the grid. But Alonso wasn't the only older driver delivering some impressive results, with Sebastian Vettel showing glimpses of his talent that he failed to show at Ferrari in 2020. His performance in Azerbaijan in particular was impressive as he drove to second position in the chaotic race. He had the number of Lance Stroll all season and did end up 9 points ahead of him in the championship. So if Aston Martin progresses next season, then Sebastian Vettel is more than capable of moving up the order with them. And then, a driver that I haven't mentioned yet is of course Kimi Raikkonen, who has retired from Formula 1 at the age of 42. But he has well and truly still got it, even in that difficult Alfa Romeo car, as he beat Giovinazzi over the course of the season with 10 points to the Italian driver's 3. Now that's a pretty one-sided result, and most of those points for Raikkonen did come in the second half of the season, despite the fact that he contracted COVID midway through the year. These drivers aren't the only older drivers who performed well though, with the other driver over the age of 33 on the grid being Lewis Hamilton, who was undoubtedly the best of these supposed old-timers, as he took the championship right down to the wire, going toe-to-toe with the new generation of talent at each and every race. So I think it's fair to say that the older drivers of Formula 1 have been showing that they've still got it in 2021, and so it's a green box for their performances. And whilst there may be a new generation of talent emerging, the old guys are still fighting for every point and podium, and will probably do so for at least another year or two. Before we look at the final 2 points of the season, I want to take a moment to ask you to consider subscribing to Behind the Drive. I've got loads of post-season content to come, and of course, we'll be soon looking forward to 2022 and who might come out on top. Thanks. Many teams have shown they are ready to take a step forward. One of the key points to note in 2021 has been just how many teams could make their way up the order next season. A whopping 8 teams and 13 drivers scored a podium in 2021, and for me, this shows that so many of those constructors are capable of taking a step forward for 2022. The likes of Aston Martin, Alpine and AlphaTauri could easily build competitive cars for next year, and they all have at least one driver who's a proven race winner. Then you have the likes of McLaren and Ferrari, who are also in a brilliant position to bridge the gap to Red Bull and Mercedes, given they've both switched their focus to next year early and have strong driver lineups that if given the right car could easily mount a title challenge going into 2022. And even the likes of Williams, Alfa Romeo and to a certain extent even Haas have an opportunity next season. Given they all switched their focus to 2022 early, these teams might not have the same resources behind them as some other teams, but they've all had the advantage of time. And thinking back to the 2009 regulation change, it was some of the smaller teams that took an early advantage following the discovery of an innovative double diffuser design. These new regulations could easily have a similar loophole, and it could be one of these teams that finds it. Not only this, but what we saw in 2021 was a title challenge between Red Bull and Mercedes. The fact that Mercedes were pushed this year means there's a good chance that in 2022, that team won't be leaps and bounds ahead of the pack as they have been throughout the last few years of the turbo hybrid era. When coupled with the budget cap, I think the timing and delay to the old regulations has been perfect, with the teams restricted this year with the bulk of their 2022 development being restricted to the new $145 million limit. But the fact that both Mercedes and Red Bull were heavily focused on the season just gone means that they're likely to be in a position where they are on the back foot for next year compared to some of their rivals. I know that Mercedes certainly ended their 2021 development early, but they will have spent so much time working out how to tune that car properly to extract the maximum performance. The last upgrade that the Brackley-based team made in 2021 was at Silverstone, all the way back in July, but their car undoubtedly got faster and faster, with there being clearly huge amounts of time working out the optimum setup for that machine. And when there has been time spent looking at that, there is fundamentally less time being spent looking at developing the 2022 car. Now, I'm not saying Mercedes are going to be nowhere next year. Of course, a team of that size will likely remain at the top, but this season has left them scratching their heads on so many occasions when Red Bull have continued to develop and improve across the year. And with the limited wind tunnel testing time imposed on them both, it will only make it more likely that it will be a more level playing field in 2022. Having said this, Lewis Hamilton has recently said that he hasn't done any sim testing of next year's car because the team are making such rapid progress with it. But I'm going to take that with a pinch of salt, given Hamilton dislikes simulator work anyway, and he was well and truly focused on 2021. As for Red Bull, well, they have said all year that they would continue to develop the car if there was a chance of a title victory, and they had that throughout the season. So if they've spent a lot of time and effort continuing to improve their 2021 car, they too will have less resources to put into next year's. Again, like Mercedes, they aren't going to be too far off, but this title fight has undoubtedly meant it's more likely that we'll be watching a more competitive field next year. I could be wrong here, and I have expressed my concerns about next year already, but I know that we will at least have a chance of seeing a new team emerge as the best for 2022, and that excites me. So the prospect of 2022 alone gets a green box from me. And one final point to make on this is just imagine if the new regulations had come in this season as they had been planned to. We'd have never known what this season could have been and the awesome battle that was at the heart of it. Lewis Hamilton is respectful in defeat. It's rare that Lewis Hamilton has failed to win the championship, especially in recent times. Given he'd won 4 in a row coming into this year, it certainly seemed like Mercedes were the clear favourites before the season. And it was so close for Hamilton this year as he was just 1 lap away from the World Championship in the end. Had he won the title, he'd have been a worthy winner, much like Verstappen is, but it just wasn't to be for the British driver this year. Hamilton has lost championships before, looking back to his rookie season in 2007 where he arguably lost the championship in a gravel trap in China, and then of course to lose another championship at the final race in 2016, losing out to his teammate that year. Interestingly, the end of the 2016 season happened in a similar way to 2021, where Hamilton was down and almost out of the championship race, only to win the last 4 races to be beaten by just 5 points at the checkered flag. So he's been in this position before, and I have to say he was so calm and controlled after the race, despite having just lost the title on the last lap of the season. I think Hamilton probably gained a few fans, and if not, at least a lot of respect from his rivals after that. It's a shame to see Mercedes protests after the race. I completely understand why it's happened, but I don't think anyone would want this season to end in the steward's office or even a courtroom. At the time of recording, Mercedes is yet to announce its intentions and is being incredibly quiet on social media and press releases. For me, if they do raise this further, I would be disappointed, but I would understand exactly why they're doing it. If they don't, then I really hope they can fight for the FIA to have the reform that I mentioned earlier. For Hamilton, I'm sure he'll take a break, take the time to reflect on his challenging 2021 season. He'll be able to reset and make sure he's back on it ready for next year, where he'll want to help Mercedes win the title once more in the new regulations. The team are fighters, and we've seen that throughout this era of Formula 1, so with that in mind, I'm sure they'll come out ready for these new regs. So overall, it's a green box for Lewis Hamilton after an incredibly close year of F1 racing and the class act that he showed following his defeat. Honourable mentions. First up on the last honourable mentions of the year has got to go to Sergio Perez. The Mexican driver had a tough job on his hands in that second Red Bull seat, which some people were saying was cursed before the start of the year. But Perez's experience in Formula 1 has almost certainly helped him to develop his driving style in a way that has helped him support Max Verstappen this season, and I couldn't be happier for him. He's proven himself in one of the most challenging cars to drive and is the driver that Red Bull team are backing. It's been an excellent season in 2021, with competition up and down the order. 2022 could easily be the same, and I can't wait to see what we have in store when we look forward to next year's competition. I want to take a moment to thank you all for watching these videos, whether it's your first Behind the Drive video or if you watch every single one. If you enjoyed this one and watched this far, then please leave it a like and consider subscribing.